Hello Andy, once again it's a pleasure to have you back at Archaeology Towers. Now today we're talking about a campaign which is currently ongoing to highlight the proposed sale of ancient Egyptian antiquities, or one antiquity in particular, which a British council wants to sell essentially for profit, to try and fill a funding gap. Do you want to just fill us in a little bit on the background to this?
Yes, thanks, Mark. Basically, in 2012, Northampton Borough Council, which is in the English East Midlands, decided that they would try and sell an ancient Egyptian statue, which they had in their museum collection, through a commercial auction house. The statue is an Old Kingdom funerary statue of a scribe called Sekhemka. It was gifted to the people of Northampton by the Marquis of Northampton in the late 19th century, on condition that it was left on display and was freely available for the people of Northampton to enjoy. In 2012, faced with budget cuts and wanting to cut needs to cut services of various kinds, the council decided that this statue in particular, which has been commercially valued at between £4 and £6 million, might be a candidate to be sold off on through a commercial auctioneer and raise money for the council.
Right. So I suppose straight away we've got the issue of whether or not they're breaking the terms of the initial bequeathment, as it were. Did you know where we stand on that? I mean, can the council actually do that, given that it was given to them for that purpose, for public display, not for sale?
Well, this is one of the most interesting and perhaps one of the most concerning parts of the whole story. And I should say, before I start, that the running on this has been made by a remarkable, very committed group of people in Northampton, made up of museum and academic professionals and lay members of the community who are just very concerned by what's going on, and led by the former chair, and I'll come on to that as to why she's the former chair, of the Friends of Northampton Museums and Galleries, a woman called Gunilla Lowe. So they've done a huge amount of work on both the legal background and the historical background to the statue and to how it came to be in the Northampton Museum collection. And basically, is extrematable, and what appears to have happened is that the Marquis of Northampton, as I said, in the late 19th century, bequeathed the statue to the people of Northampton on condition it was on display for free in perpetuity. If it was taken off display for any reason, then the ownership rights reverted back to the Marquis. In 2012, the council decided that they had title to sell the statue and set in motion the process, but then the Marquis of Northampton appeared with the original deed of gift, which the council appeared to have lost their copy. Or say they lost their copy.
Can't imagine. How did that happen?
Anyway, to cut to the chase, the council spent over £40,000 in legal fees to try and clarify the precise legal position over this. And the latest is that they've reached an agreement with the Marquis, which is being the exact terms of which and the exact legal arguments of which are being kept secret on grounds of commercial confidentiality and privacy. But basically, the statue is due to be sold at Christie's in London on the 10th of July. The council will pay all the charges, all the buyer's premiums, and get 55% of the proceeds. And the Marquis of Northampton, having paid none of the seller's fees or anything like that, will get 45% of the proceeds, which could be over £2 million.
Right. Now this actually comes straight to an issue which was actually highlighted on the Archaeology Facebook page. You are an admin on that page, and you were able to post the fact that the Mortimer group are currently supporting the campaign to highlight this issue and question its morality, if not its legality. But one of the immediate questions actually was quite clear, and that was that this is now no longer really an archaeological or even a historical artefact. It's now in the arts market. It has been bequeathed as a piece of art, and it is owned by the council essentially as a piece of art, or jointly owned. And if they've come to an agreement, the owners, why shouldn't this sale go ahead? I hate to be devil's advocate on this, but it's still, I think it's a very valid point that was made. And what do you think?
I think it's absolutely valid. I think really the statue of Sekhemka is a symbol of a couple of issues that are really important in terms of our national and local arts and cultural collections that are held in our galleries and museums, and often held in trust on behalf of the community by local authorities, charitable organisations, and so on. In this case, first of all, by selling the statue, Northampton have been told that they will lose their Museums Association accreditation because it's in breach of the Museums Association Code of Ethics. That means basically that they won't be able to access public money, heritage lottery, that kind of thing, for future projects. And in fact, even current projects may be under threat if they lose their accreditation. So it's a pretty serious move to make. The council, I should say, claim that the money will be reinvested in a £14 million upgrade to the museum.
Which, by the sounds of it, if they get, 55% of 6 million potentially, that's not going to touch this £14 million. That sounds like obfuscation to me.
You might say that I couldn't possibly comment. I think the point is that this has led to a lot of very high emotion, quite understandably, because people feel, particularly people in the museums world, feel that this kind of, it's been called a fire sale of important, expensive cultural objects to fill shortfalls in other funding streams. It's been observed increasingly. It is actually, some people would argue, it's an existential threat to our traditional concept of a museum as something that holds and preserves and displays in trust beautiful and culturally important items to make them accessible to the public.
Well, actually, when you say that, it is interesting because people, especially across Europe, certainly, I mean, to a certain extent the US, but definitely in Europe, they criticise Britain for making use of things like the Portable Antiquities Scheme, which encourages folk who find finds in a field to report them to a museum because ostensibly they'll be safe in that museum. It's best that they are recorded and that they are safe and that we know about them, their context in particular. But this kind of action really legitimizes those concerns. I mean, I think they're invalid concerns, to be honest, but actually maybe they're not. Maybe if a museum can just decide to sell its collection on, perhaps, dare I say, went a little better than looting in Egypt. I mean, it's it's quite a big problem, and I suppose the question is what can be done about this. I mean, obviously archaeologists have some might say a biased opinion about this. Others might say actually a moral obligation to make their opinion known about the treatment of artifacts, because after all, often we're accused internationally of being essentially grave robbers or looters, and it's only really that it is the that sort of buffer of academic rigour, and some might even say a veneer of academic rigour, which prevents us from actually descending into that sort of dark world of just robbing and looting and selling. Therefore, I think it's in our interest to make our voices and our reasons known about this kind of issue. But what can we do on this? And I know I've sort of laboured the point there, but I think it's important because this goes to the heart of actually what makes an archaeologist and a museum different from a looter and a private collector.
I think you're absolutely right to highlight that argument, Mark. I would say that the Sekhemka case shows that the people who look after our cultural heritage, wherever it's come from. The fact, we are where we are with this. And you might say there's a moral argument for returning it to Egypt if the council no longer wants it. Other people say, well, what's the problem with selling it to somebody who wants to give it a home through the means of a commercial auction house? I think there's an increasing body of evidence that the commercial antiquities world, by promoting antiquities as valuable objects, and as fashions come and go, and as availability rises or falls, the hammer an increasing hammer price on, say, ancient Egyptian antiquities makes it more attractive for anybody who wants to traffic and loot those antiquities to actually engage in that. The linkage might be a bit nebulous, but it's there, and there's an increasing amount of evidence.
So in some ways, you're saying that actually this sale could prove the worth of looting. It could actually say, well, in the UK at Christie's, you can get an awful lot of money for this stuff. Let's go out and do some looting.
That's exactly the point. I mean, we're already seeing, we've had numerous cases in the last 10, 12 years, and it's particularly pertinent because it's in the news at the moment, of organisations in the Middle East, in places like Iraq and Syria, who are trafficking antiquities alongside the arms. There's a case of a seizure in Iraq that was quoted by an American army officer, where they seized arms and trafficked antiquities that were in the process of being exported out of the country. Right. Onto the grey market and the black market. Now, I'm not saying in any way that the council or Christie's or
they're not. They're certainly not complicit
or anything like that.
No.
But it's a very complicated symbiotic relationship, and it's one that I think we have to be aware of.
It's also actually a remarkable irony that such people are simultaneously fighting against the decadence of another culture, but also taking advantage of it to fund their fight. But that's another issue entirely. So very briefly, I mean, this video I think has more or less gone on long enough. I mean, we've got a good sense of the issues really now. But what can we possibly do if we want to log and lodge our displeasure with this state of affairs? And also, what's the deadline? I mean, when is the thing going on sale?
Right. Well, the campaign are currently running a petition on the website 38 Degrees, which is currently, and I'm just glancing at it now. We've currently gained the petition's currently gained as many signatures as the council had in its entire consultation about this sale. Had some very interesting, very leading questions. It started off with the premise that the sale was a good thing, and what should the money be spent on?
Well, things like, for example, when people want to knock down a heritage building, they say, do you agree that housing for people who need it is a good thing? You can't say no to that, can you? You have to say yes. Sorry.
Exactly. So anyway, the absolute deadline is, as things stand at the moment, unless the council could be persuaded to change their mind and withdraw the statue from sale, the statue will go under the hammer at Christie's in London on the 10th of July. The petition is running on 38 Degrees at the moment, but I think one of the most disturbing issues about this, and it's happened with another museum sale that actually took place in Croydon, when the council sold off some valuable Chinese porcelain through Hong Kong, in fact, so they could get the Chinese millionaires market. They didn't actually get as much out of it as they thought they were going to. It didn't reach its top estimate, but even so, this stuff was sold. The council, in that case, the council's own lawyers said that the decision was open to legal challenge, but because the protesters trying to stop the sale couldn't raise the money, it was never tested in court. And the same case is happening in Northampton. There are legal questions which can, and I think should be answered, not just for Northampton, but for the good of the sector. And yet those questions may well not be asked because nobody can afford to pay the £2,000 for a solicitor's letter and the £20,000 that it would take to take it to judicial review.
Well,
The price of justice, and I think that's a question that us in the heritage sector have to ask, because at some point, can and should these questions be tested? As I say, the Croydon porcelain was a case of this. It was also the case that the export of the City of Adelaide, the ship City of Adelaide, again, there was a barrister's opinion that the sale was unlawful in the strict terms of the law, but again, the money wasn't available to take it to judicial review, and the ship's now in Australia. So it's a difficult area. This, and if, people maybe would think about making donations to the campaign to see if we can, on this occasion at least, test the assumptions that the council are making and that other people are making, and get some clarity here, so that in future, if these kind of sales are proposed, there is a body of case law and legal opinion that says yes you can or no you can't.
Yeah, okay. Or at the very least, we can try and prove that there is interest in how these cases pan out, even if we can't actually take it much further. And that's the funny thing, actually. I mean, obviously, I'll leave links, relevant links to this actually below in the video information. But it actually occurs to me, Andy, that in some ways archaeologists are a little bit like those people you see in Hollywood films who are they have they're being made to wear masks and sort of crude lab equipment, and we're producing essentially an illicit material, drugs or something, and the people who get the ingredients, they benefit. The people who buy the stuff, they've got the money, but the people who actually do the processing, we're just kind of often slightly powerless folk in the middle. And maybe this is a good opportunity to move to highlight the fact that yes, we deal with things that can be highly valuable and highly illicit actually, but also as well, our dealing is not simply the middleman. We're not just passing this stuff from source to the market. We're not passing this stuff from one wallet to another. We actually have an opinion, and we actually care, and other people should care about this stuff as well. So maybe this is an opportunity to sort of highlight that.
I think so, and to say that ethical archaeology does not take cognizance of the value of an object, and in fact, a prerequisite of working on an archaeological site, and certainly in Britain, is that if you find something, for example, that would be liable to a reward under the Treasures Act, you basically state that you will not make a claim under that, even if you find a hoard of gold sovereigns or something like that. Archaeology isn't about the financial value; it's about cultural value and historical value. And
as I say, even though there are issues and questions about where this particular object lies, whether it be archaeology or an object in terms of art, this is a very interesting and a very good case on which to make this point publicly known. So
I think so, and I think that's why I think we need to thank Gunilla and her team in Northampton for bringing this into the public domain and keeping it in the public domain at some cost to themselves, and certainly in emotional terms. They've committed a lot to this, and it's entirely public spirited.
Well, excellent, and that's more or less what we try to be here at Archaeology Tower. We try to be fairly public spirited as much as we possibly can, unless obviously the public do something to annoy us. With that in mind, though, obviously you have done nothing to annoy us, and neither has this campaign. And what we'll do is we'll leave the links below. You guys can check that stuff out, and hopefully we can just make this a little bit more well known and go from there. So as ever, thank you so much for your time, Andy. It's been a pleasure. And actually, in the near future, we plan on revisiting the topic of aviation archaeology. That proved quite popular, and there are a few additional people who may want to get involved in that continuing discussion. But we'll revisit that at a future time. Until then, thank you as ever. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.